Today's story is titled Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak. This is how it goes. It was a dark and stormy night when Max put on his wolf costume and sailed away in his little boat to the land where the wild things lived. The waves crashed, and the wind howled as Max sailed farther and farther from home. Soon he came to a mysterious island covered in towering trees with vines hanging down like snakes ready to strike. Max docked his boat on the shore and stared in awe at the shadowy shapes moving between the trees. He gulped. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea after all. But before Max could turn back, he heard a roar so loud it shook the ground beneath his feet. Out from the trees lumbered the most enormous, hairy beast Max had ever seen. It towered over him with horns on its head, spikes down its back, and dagger-like claws on its gigantic paws. The creature lowered its massive head until it was face to face with Max and opened its mouth full of razor-sharp teeth. "Who dares enter my domain?" it bellowed. Max trembled in his wolf costume, but somehow found the courage to yell back, "I am Max, king of the wild things, and I have come to tame you all." The beast narrowed its yellow eyes. "No one can tame us," it roared. "We do what we want when we want. We are wild and free." The monster lunged toward Max, jaws open wide. Max quickly dodged aside, and the creature's teeth snapped shut just inches from his face. "Run, little boy," the monster growled. "Run away home before we gobble you up." But Max stood tall. "I'm not afraid of you," he shouted bravely. "I am the king of the wild things, and I will prove it." Just then, more frightening beasts emerged from the trees, with terrible horns, terrible teeth, and terrible eyes that glowed in the dark. They gathered around Max, howling and snorting. "Look, it's a boy," one creature sneered. "Let's eat him up," another drooled. "I bet he's yummy." A third monster licked its lips. Max looked around at the circle of wild things surrounding him. They poked him with their claws and snapped at him with their jaws. But Max refused to run away. "Stop!" he yelled in his most commanding voice. "I am Max, king of all wild things. You will not eat me, and you will not frighten me. Instead, you will do as I say." The creatures looked stunned. Never before had something so small dared to boss them around. One beast swiped its massive paw at Max, but Max stared straight into its eyes without blinking. Another monster let out an ear-splitting roar in Max's face, but Max just yelled even louder, "Be quiet!" The wild things glanced at each other in surprise. This tiny boy in a wolf suit didn't seem scared of them at all. "Come on!" Max shouted. "Follow me!" And he marched off into the island's tangled jungle. After a moment, the herd of curious creatures followed behind him. They pushed through dense underbrush and waded across muddy lagoons, stomping down the jungle with their thundering feet. At last, they came to a clearing with a gigantic tree in the center. Vines hung down from its twisting branches like strands of spaghetti. "Climb," Max commanded. So the wild things began to climb. They clambered up the massive trunk on their gangly limbs and swarmed across the branches like ants. They swung from vines and dangled upside down by their feet. They scraped their horns against the bark and shed fur all over the leaves. Soon, the whole tree was full of shaggy beasts. When they reached the top, Max shouted, "Look!" In the distance was the beautiful blue sea surrounding their secret island, and beyond that, a faint glow on the horizon. "That's where I live," Max said. "It's not so far after all." The wild creatures gazed curiously at the distant glow. For the first time, they wondered what might exist beyond their lonely island. As the sun began to set, Max said, "I'm the king of the wild things, but now I have to go home to my land. It's time for all wild things to go to sleep." Grumbling tiredly, the beasts climbed down from the branches one by one. They lumbered back through the dark jungle by Max's side, no longer snapping their jaws at him. When they arrived at the shore, Max's small boat was waiting. The creatures gathered around as Max stepped inside. "Farewell, wild things," Max said. "I hereby decree that you will always be wild and free, but never forget that I tamed you, if only for a day." And with that, Max sailed away as the creatures watched silently from shore. They stared at the little boat floating away across the moonlit sea until it disappeared into the night. Then the wild things tramped back into the jungle to find their dens beneath the trees. And Max sailed home to his bedroom, where his hot supper was waiting for him in his wolf costume, still smelling of wild things. He smiled as he drifted off to sleep, dreaming of the secret world where the wild things lived that he had tamed all on his own.